Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. After an embarrassing credit card decline incident, I shifted my bank accounts and mortgage elsewhere and played a delightful one-player game with my old bank for over 2 decades. The second story. Client tried to throw me under the bus, but I had already sued the insurer without instructions, saving millions for the company and making me their hero. The third story. Job interviewer rudely ghosted me after I traveled for an interview, so I left a memorable mark on their lawn. And the first story is made bank pay and it made me feel better. Many years ago, I received my first credit card and thought I was the bee's knees. I'd had it about a month and went into HMV to buy a CD for a Christmas present. Queued up like the good Brit I was, and I finally got to the cashier. Presented them my shiny new card and it gets declined. I told them that's not possible because I was nowhere near my credit limit and had used it only the day before. They try it again and it still gets declined, which they let me know in a very loud voice. I had no money on me or other ways to pay, so I had to leave without the CD walking past the long queue that had formed behind me, and I'm sure I heard a few snickers. Felt so humiliated. As soon as I got home, I was straight on the phone to the bank to ask what had happened. Turns out my first statement was due and I hadn't paid anything against it, so they blocked the card. I told them I'd just been in local branch the day before to pay it off, in full, so what had happened to that? Went quiet for a bit and then they said, oh yes, we can see the payment, but it hasn't been applied to the account yet. Give it a day or two for the card to be unlocked. I was fuming. The credit card was with the same bank I had the current account with, and I could see the money had been paid out the same day. I decided to move my current account to a new bank, which didn't charge as much. I also moved the mortgage I had with them to a different lender. Then I paid the next credit card statement exactly 1p more than was due. For over 20 years, I received a monthly credit card statement from the bank showing my account was in credit. I'm surprised it took them so long to realize the card was inactive, but it always lifted my little heart to see that letter and think about the postage they paid to send it. Edit. As I said, I had the card for about a month. Considering you have them for years, the card was shiny and new. I had a mortgage, but again, I said this was many years ago, and credit cards weren't usual. We had debit cards and checks. The fact that you paid 1 penny more on your credit card than you owed and received a statement every month saying that your account was in credit made me laugh. It had to be the best revenge against the bank that humiliated you so much. Instead of just making the effort to unlock the card, you decided to move your entire current account to another bank, and even move your mortgage to another lender. And the bonus was the opportunity to annoy the bank by watching them spend money on sending you a statement every month. Tip: when you decide it's time to leave this bank, don't forget to thank them profusely for all the years of great service and statement letters. They might even send you an extra statement as a gift. Life is too short to take small inconveniences seriously. You can always find a way to make them fun and beneficial for yourself. The next story is revenge on a client who tried to throw me under the bus. I was pushing 40, and I'd learned a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice. But one of the most important lessons I learned was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me. First to himself, second to the court, and last the client. Always make sure you come first, and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will F you, he said. They'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown. And I'm still downtown now. But fortunately for me, I remembered this lesson. And it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that, and owned things here and there. Not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio. And one day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim, he told me. He had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees, and Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer's going to F you, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and the loss because Frank had not asked for my help. He just let it slip one day, and since then I kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank effed up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job, but the proof of loss was okay. At least, so that was one less thing to worry about. You don't know that, he said. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. I'm paid to know when insurers are trying to screw my clients, I said, and the insurer is going to screw you. They've been stringing you along for ages with requests and questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you, not unless you sue them. But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. The limitation period expires in 2 weeks, I said, and once that 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying sorry you're out of time, and that'll be that. Don't leave this till the last minute. Let me sue right now and you'll have more money in no time. Frank was like, sure, fine, whatever. Don't bother me, I got this, blah blah blah. And he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple days before the deadline. I'm going to be at trial and you won't be able to reach me, my final email said, but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue. He didn't bother to reply and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks and no email from Frank. Then a month passed and another month, still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself, and then my phone rang. It was Frank. Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about? We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. You were right. He asked me what I was talking about and could he see a copy of the claim. What claim? I said. The claim against the insurer. You know, that claim. Does that mean the insurer didn't pay? I said. He hung up on me, and then a few minutes later my computer dinged, and there was Frank's email, talking about how he spoke, and he told me to sue, and he was worried when I hadn't sent him a copy of the claim, so he was following up to get a copy of the claim. I emailed him back. I take it that the insurer didn't pay you, just like I told you they wouldn't, and now that the limitation period is expired, they told you to jump in the lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions. Is that it? I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me. But if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then and this was now. So I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss, plus I CC'd Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away and called me later that day. Frank messed up, he said. We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? So his excuses didn't work? Nope. Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he told me to sue. Once the file goes to legal counsel, Frank's role was over. The company knew Frank was BSing them. So that's it then? Bill said. We just lost a couple of millions of bucks? It's okay, I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to F up, I issued a claim against the insurer. Because I'd made Frank send me the proof of a loss while earlier, I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim and short on details, but good enough. You sued without instructions, Bill said. Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions. Yup, I said. I sued without instructions. I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. It's a little rough, I said, but we can always amend. Thank God, Bill said. Can I leave it with you? Of course he could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and I knew I'd collect from them no problem. A few days later, I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. I usually deal with Frank, I said. What's up? What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting, and they handed him a one-page letter, and then he put his little office thing in a box, and security walked him past his coworkers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me he was just an anecdote, a cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers sometimes over beers, maybe too often, because I'm getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus, but the guy who replaced him was great and never nickel and dimed me, so it was all good. Ego is a terrible thing, Frank's ego being the culprit in this case. This Frank was obviously not a grateful customer. He didn't listen to your advice, didn't believe you, and eventually kicked you out. But life gave him an unexpected surprise in the form of bad decisions regarding insurance issues. In fact, you could have felt like a real hero who came to the rescue when they really needed him. The moral of the story is simple. Always listen to your lawyer, especially the one who's trying to prevent you from having negative consequences. After all, lawyers are here to protect you, even if you, like Frank, think you know better. Even if they have to litigate without your instructions to save you from losing millions. And if you don't listen to your lawyer, you can easily find yourself aboard the bus that just threw you under it. The third story is, job interviewer ghosted me and then had one of his employees tell me to go home. So I did. While I do have a job already, I thought it would be worthwhile to see what else is out there. A week ago, I found a job posting on Indeed. It sounded like a good gig, paid good, and is work that I like doing. The only downfall is that it's a 35-minute drive out of town. I had a good conversation with the business owner via Indeed inbox, and he seemed like a good guy. I explained that I work every day from 7 a.m. to 3:10 p.m., and he understood that there's a bit of commute to his shop. He asked me if I could meet up with him at 3:30. I told him that it isn't possible as I was done at 3:10 and can't do a 35-minute drive in under 20 minutes. I explained that I would be leaving town at 3:10 to come and see him, and that I would see him when I get there, somewhere around 3:40ish. So I gave him with my phone number just in case something was to change, and we left on a good note. I drove rather fast, getting there at 3:37, happy that I got there in under 35 minutes. I show up, business closed. I figured he was somewhere nearby, so I get out of my vehicle to search. I look over to my left to see two teenagers moving some materials. I approached them and asked them where their boss was while explaining that I had a meeting with him now. One of them then informs me that he just left a few minutes ago, but could call him back to come meet me. He calls his boss saying who I am, etc. The teenager chuckles, says okay with a "you gotta be effing kidding me" look on his face, and then hangs up. Teenager to me. He says to go home. I asked him to repeat himself. He said go home, this time laughing uncomfortably. I now have another 35-minute drive ahead of me and I'm very irritated. I decided to leave as his boss instructed, but instead of driving the gravel driveway back onto the highway, the way I came in from, I decided to leave him a present to remember me by. Some donut tire skid marks on his front lawn as I tore out of there. 30 minutes after that, he felt the need to reach out to me and introduce himself via private number, but I let it go to voicemail, as I was driving, which upon listening to later on further proved to me that all his negative Google reviews were more than likely all true, and that this person isn't someone to do business with anyways. It seems that you responded to his inquiries as kindly and responsibly as you could. You even arrived a little faster than expected. And now this injustice. You were simply sent home. I hope that you manage to find an even better job where you'll be valued and respected more than this business owner. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.